Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. I'm a life and marriage coach for moms, wife, mom of 3, and I'm also an Aries, and for my fellow human design nerds, a sacral manifesting generator. This podcast is for women who want to be happier in their marriage as they navigate their journey through motherhood, even if you're like me and you weren't shown how while growing up. Inside, we're going to be talking about breaking generational cycles when it comes to how to handle conflict in healthy ways, redefining motherhood your way, and prioritizing your well-being, because here, we believe that women don't have to sacrifice their happiness to be a great mom. And a quick note to mamas listening with kids around, you may want to pop your earbuds in because nothing is left unsaid on this show, which means there may be times where something I say isn't meant for little ears. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. Today's episode was inspired by a post that I made inside of my Facebook group. If you're not in there already, go in there. It's called Marriage and Motherhood, just like this podcast. And in that post, I asked the ladies in there, what are you craving most in your marriage right now? And I want to say 80% of them said quality time. So I wanted to dive into that a little bit about why that tends to be the most common answer, other than better communication, when it comes to your marriage after having kids, right? When we have kids, not only do we birth a child, we actually ourselves as women go through a huge transformation. We become mothers. Like the second that we're pregnant, we are now caring about this baby and its well-being and doing all the things that we need to do to make sure that it's healthy. And after it's born, you now have tunnel vision. All you can do is focus on how to support this baby, like developmentally, physically, and, just feeding them, changing their diapers, mentally stimulating them, all of the things. And in the process, we kind of put our marriage on the back burner. It's not a conscious decision. It just kind of happens, right? You've got this child of yours that needs a lot of you. And previously, you didn't have this much responsibility. Sure, you still had responsibility, but it wasn't like this. It wasn't to the point where you had someone depending on you. You were the only one depending on you, right? It was you and your partner, and both of you are very capable human beings. And you had all the time in the world compared to now to hang out. And in fact, everything you did together was quality time. Whereas after you become parents, you've got a shit ton more responsibilities, right? You've got to maintain the house on top of taking care of the child who seemingly makes so many messes, needs to eat so often. Like, I seriously am just so shocked by how good they are at making a mess. Like my 2-year-old, give her 5 minutes and your entire living room will look like animals were in there, like toys everywhere, as if she used toys as confetti to celebrate something. It's just insane. So becoming parents really forces us to prioritize. But what else is true? We're tired as hell. We've got a lot more responsibilities, and just having that responsibility of taking care of someone else is very mentally draining. Like, I remember when I first came into the picture for my stepson's life, and all I did was take him to the park. And I remember wanting to take a nap afterwards. I'm like, why am I so tired? All we did was go to the park. How can that be so tiring? Because it's not the same as you going to the park for yourself. You've got to make sure this child isn't killing themselves in some kind of way, running off into the street, or, you know, doing things that are outside of their physical capabilities, or, maybe they're not being kind to someone else, or maybe you got to defend them if another child is not being kind to them. It's just like constant alertness. You're just constantly paying attention. Whereas before kids, it was okay to zone out once in a while, right? So after seeing so many women respond to that post saying that they were craving more quality time with their husbands and partners, I just knew I had to make an episode to address this. And so here are the 3 most common reasons why you may not be getting the quality time with your partner that you want. Reason number 1 is that you've changed. Becoming a mom, like I said, kind of shifts your priorities. Not kind of, it actually really does shift your priorities. And in the process, you may find that you have taken over as just being a mom. You've forgotten that you're also a woman. You've forgotten that you're also a wife, maybe even a friend. And you've let parts of you fall away that didn't need to fall away because you have over-identified as a mom. And whatever that image or vision of a good mom means to you, you have latched onto that. And anything that you think doesn't align with that, you have let fall away. Now, how do I know this? Because that was me. This happened twice, actually. The first time happened when I first came into my oldest son's life. He's my stepson. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't go party anymore. That's not responsible. That doesn't make me a good mom. I can't go out with friends as much anymore because I'm now a family woman. I need to be home and I need to take care of the kid and I need to be super responsible. And I just completely forgot who I was. And I let my identity, my new identity as a mother figure, completely overrun who I was as a person. And I forgot how to have fun. I just took the role so damn seriously. And it was just like, now looking back, I'm like, why did I do that? I didn't need to do that, right? Instead of picking and choosing what I could keep a part of me and what I can let taper off or tame down, I kind of just like burned it all to the ground. I was like, nope, whatever this vision is that I see that defines a quote unquote good mom, that's what I am. Everything else needs to go away. But my definition was too perfect. It was not sustainable because I wasn't doing anything for me anymore. I was just like, it was almost like I signed up for this like horrible job description where in order for me to get the job, I had to give up myself. But I didn't know that I was doing that. And I'm assuming that a lot of you can relate to this too. I've seen the memes. I've seen a lot of people say that they relate to this. And so if this is you, just know that you're not alone. And also, invitation to be more aware of what you've done and challenge whether you should still keep doing that. Or maybe it's time to invite more of you back into the picture, right? Now, I said that that was my first time doing it, right? So there was also a second time when my son was born almost 6 years ago. I did it again, right? So my stepson was almost 2 when I came into his life. And so I had not experienced the infancy stage. And so when my son was born, oh my gosh, I just went through it all over again. To the point where I didn't even brush my hair anymore. I had a hard time like keeping up with friends. I was just like so in the zone of like must produce milk, must get this kid to nap, right? I became like a nap Nazi. It's crazy. And I became so rigid with my schedule. Everything had to revolve around his sleep. I lost my sense of spontaneity, and life became really transactional. So it's very possible that you are not getting the quality time that you want because life has been shifted to this like monotonous routine. And maybe you're waiting for your partner to plan something, but you've changed. And so maybe they've gotten used to it too. They've gotten used to your relationship dynamic shifting to co-parenting roommates. And which leads me to the second most common reason is that it's possible that your partner has tried to create quality time or create opportunities to connect with you, but you've turned them down a lot, which comes off as rejection. And so after a while, of course, they're going to stop. They're going to stop trying because if you keep turning down their bids for connection, then why bother trying? Because nothing they're doing is working. And who likes to experience failure or rejection repeatedly? Right? No one likes to feel that. It doesn't feel good. And so it's more effort than it is enjoyable. And you probably didn't even know you were rejecting them or that it was coming off as rejection because you're just thinking, well, this is, taking too much effort for me to go do your idea, forget about it. Like I'm going to have to do too much to make sure the kids are taken care of, or I'm just too tired, or that doesn't sound like a fun idea. And you're just like bursting their bubble left and right, right? Not even intending to be negative. You're just being really honest, right? But if you look at it from their perspective, they're like, what about this? And you're like, no, what about that? You're like, it just doesn't feel good when everything that they're offering you is just shot down one after the other. The third most common reason is communication. Is your communication feeling tense and difficult? Do your conversations easily escalate and get out of hand? If you cannot communicate in ways where you feel like partners and feel like you can tackle any issue together, and instead it feels really hard and stressful, then of course, time together is not going to be enjoyable because why would you want to spend more time
where there's going to be more opportunities for miscommunication to happen, for more drama to happen, right? You see, communication and quality time go hand in hand together. The better you two can communicate as partners, the more likely you're going to want to spend time with each other. However, the inverse is not true. Spending more time together does not make for better communication, right? You need tools to know how to communicate better. Spending more time together does not mean you magically have tools on hand that go, poof, okay, we've spent enough time together. We now know how to communicate better, right? So if you're struggling with this, I would say stop trying to spend more time together and instead focus your efforts on improving communication. Because honestly, who wants to spend more time feeling stressed out, frustrated, and unheard or misunderstood, or like someone is against you, right? I'm sure you don't. I certainly don't. And so just to recap, here are the 3 most common reasons why you may not be getting the quality time that you want with your partner. Maybe you've changed. You've been over-identifying as mom and completely forgotten what makes you you, what made your partner attracted to you in the first place, why they chose to marry you, right? Number 2, maybe they've been rejected a lot. They've tried to hang out with you. They've tried to connect with you in their own way. Maybe it wasn't right, but they feel rejected and they don't want to try anymore. And then number 3, maybe it's because you guys don't know how to communicate with each other and it just feels hard and it's just easier to not be around each other unless you guys are talking about simple things, right? So those are the 3 most common reasons. And here are things that you can do to address all of that in hopes that you will leave this episode having at least one thing to work on to help you lay the foundation down so that your partner starts to want to hang out more. Okay. Now, this is not like a snap your fingers kind of thing. This is okay, I now am more aware of what I can work on, and now I need to do it consistently. Okay. Because doing it once or twice and then going back to how you used to do things does not build that level of trust that your partner needs in order to be like, yeah, it's safe to hang out again. Okay. It has likely been years of whatever situation you guys are in right now. And so it's going to take time, not quite years, but it's going to take time for them to realize that things are changing and to get with the program and realize that, oh, okay, it's okay to try again. It's okay to say, yeah, let's hang out. It's okay to expend the effort because it could be worth it. Maybe it won't be like before anymore, right? So it'll take some time to work through their resistance and have them be more open-minded about connecting again. So here are some things you can do. Take motherhood and all your responsibilities and dial down the seriousness, right? Remember to live your life. Okay. When you're on your deathbed, you're not going to look back and be like, I had a really good life because my house was so sparkly clean. And I went to all my kids' soccer games and I did all of this and all of that. And I was the Pinterest version of a good mom. Okay, like, no, this is not a competition of who can sacrifice themselves the most. Like, this is not a journey of martyrdom. This is a journey of you living your life the best way you see fit. And your life is meant to be enjoyed. Okay. Now I know there's stuff that's going to happen that's not enjoyable, but let's not add more stuff to diminish the potential of our joy, of the joy that we get to experience from life. Okay. If anything, let's expand that. All right. Another thing you can do to help you with this is to make sure you're meeting your basic needs. Are you getting enough sleep? This is something I'm still working through. But are you getting enough sleep? Are you practicing self-care? Are you being mindful of your energy? Like, are you giving away your energy to the point where you're drained, to the point where you're giving so much of yourself and you're not allowing yourself to receive from others? Are you burned out? Are the things that you're doing taking more from you than it is giving to you? Right? Those things I call energy vampires. Like, do you have a lot of those in your life? Something to consider. And how can you build up your resilience when it comes to life stressors? Right? And practicing self-care helps with that. Raising your emotional awareness helps with that. Making sure that you are taking care of yourself, like with sleeping and eating the right foods and moving your body, all of that contributes to building up your resilience. Because when you feel overwhelmed with life, guess what happens? You're probably taking it out on your partner. They're your punching bag. And when you do that, they're probably not going to be thinking about how much they want to experience more of that, which would happen if they hang out with you more. So make sure you're taking care of you so that you can get a better handle of life stressors, because life is always going to have some type of stress for you. That's just the nature of being human, right? And it's really a choice to equip ourselves to handle it. We can choose to run ourselves down to the ground and just get knocked down a lot easier, or we can support ourselves to be more resilient, almost like you're putting on a suit of armor and you're like, okay, I'm ready to go. I can take on more because I have taken care of myself. I'm not depleted. I'm fulfilled. Another thing you can do is try telling your partner what you want. It's so easy to think of what you don't want. And it takes a conscious effort to think of what you do want. So what if you just told them, hey, I miss hanging out together. Can we work together to plan some quality time? Or maybe you guys decide to take turns. Okay, I will plan the next date and you plan the date after that. Here are our parameters. Here's how often we want it to happen. Like, make it a collaborative effort. Turn it into a fun conversation. Maybe do it over some wine or margaritas, like whatever suits your fancy. Maybe talk about it when you're on a road trip together or having a walk together, right? Add some fun into the planning process and involve them in it. Because if you're just sitting around waiting for your partner to be like, I'm going to ask you out, and they haven't done it already, then you're probably going to be waiting for a while. And as you wait, your resentment will build, your bitterness will build, and that's going to affect how you show up in your marriage. It's going to affect how much compassion you offer them, how open you are to having conversations, how quick to snap you are, whether you give them the benefit of the doubt or not, right? Whether you feel like being playful around them or if you're just serious, it really does affect how you interact with your partner. And then speaking of planning, take a look at how your schedule looks like right now. Check out everything that you do and see where you can delegate, delete, or automate stuff. As moms, a lot of what we do fall into the quote unquote shoulds, right? The should bucket. And I just want to give you permission to give yourself permission to delete, opt out, unsubscribe from any of the shoulds that are not actually helping you in your life, but they're just adding pressure to you and they're taking away your time. But because your mom did it, or because you had this idea that good moms do this, like, if you don't want to do it, you have the power to say, I'm not going to do that anymore. Okay. Like for me, I used to believe that I had to cook every single night and that every single meal had to be made out of scratch. It had to be a home cooked meal because that's what my mom did. And she's amazing for it. And it led me to have a lot of burnout. And I would feel guilt when I didn't. But all of that was a choice I didn't know I was making, but it was a choice nonetheless. And now I give myself permission to be like, no, I am not cooking every single night. Right? I've got 3 kids. I run a business. No. Okay. I will just adhere to my goal of making sure my family eats a healthy meal most of the time. And I'm going to prioritize my mental health. And so sometimes that looks like ordering in. Sometimes that looks like buying one of those subscription services where they, ship you pre-portioned meals that you just put together and cook. And sometimes that means cooking a meal from scratch. But I don't have to cook every single night. It doesn't have to look any one way. I get to choose what best supports me and my family. And that's enough. I don't need to be, what's that name? Like a Susie homemaker over here that has this pot roast ready by the time my husband's done working. A, my life doesn't even look like hers. And B, I am not her. That kind of lifestyle does not suit me. And so I'm not going to follow that. I get to do things my way. And so do you, right? Here's another example. Your house, it doesn't need to look like a model home. It does not need to look like nobody lives there. Because guess what? People live there. And it's totally okay that it looks like people live there. Right? Oh my gosh, if I held myself to that standard, I would go insane because my daughter makes such a big mess all of the time. All of the time. It's like as soon as I clean it, she undoes it. So it's like, well, okay. I'm just going to lower my standards right now since my kids are young. And as they become more helpful, then I'll raise my standards because I'm not going to kill myself over here when nobody else cares. Literally no one cares. So why am I putting that pressure on myself when I don't need to? Okay. So if that's you, invitation to challenge your belief and see where you can change it to be more fitting for you, to support your well-being more. And if you said communication was a problem, then work on how you fight. Learn communication tools, whether you learn from me by becoming a client, attend one of my workshops, attend one of my group programs, whatever, read a book that helps you, whatever you find most fitting for you, gain the tools that you need to help your communication feel better. Make sure that when you are arguing, you are working towards leaning into each other rather than away from each other. Okay? Because you can either choose to come together or push them away. And when communication feels tense between you two, it becomes way too easy to start just avoiding all potentially charged topics to the point where you don't even talk about important stuff anymore. It's just like, not going to do that one. That one's going to lead to us fighting, right? And then what happens? Your conversations turn into more of a co-parenting roommate situation where all you're talking about are logistics. And that makes connecting feel way harder. And it doesn't motivate you to put the time and effort into it because who wants to fight, right? Who wants to add more stress to their life? And you're talking about the person that you chose to commit to, the person you said, hey, I want you to be my person for the rest of our lives, and I love you. So if you are having a hard time communicating with that person, that is your person, something needs to change here. Okay. Yes, it takes work, but you know what? You arguing takes work. So why don't you take that work and at least strive towards making your conversations improving so that you can fight better each time. Become more of a team each time. And last but not least, I have to mention this. You probably saw this one coming, but maybe having more sex would help. Are you guys connecting physically anymore? And I know sex isn't like everything in a relationship, but it is certainly an important aspect of your relationship because that's like one of the clear identifiers or the clear things that separate your relationship from being a friendship. And sex is just a great way to share your undivided attention with each other and be reminded of how connected you two can feel. And it might just be the inspiration you two need to start connecting more often. Now, as someone whose sex drive has lowered since having kids, I totally get when you just kind of don't feel like it. And sometimes you have to remember that, oh, it is enjoyable, but I may not feel inclined to engage in it, but it is still enjoyable. So you kind of sometimes have to like convince yourself or prepare yourself for it and remember the end goal. It's like, oh yeah, I do feel more connected afterwards. And this is what happens as a result when we are more regularly having physical connection with each other. Like I personally noticed my husband's way kinder and wants to be around me more when we are having sex more frequently. It's just something I've noticed. And so maybe if you have fallen off in this area, they're feeling out of touch with you because they don't feel like you want to connect with them. And so maybe they're trying to protect themselves in not engaging because they're just accepting that this is now life, that this area of your relationship, this physical aspect, is basically just been laid to rest. And it's better for them to not get their hopes up because they're only going to be disappointed, right? So something to consider if you're also like me and maybe your sex life has gone downhill for a while, maybe it's something to revisit. It could very well be the thing that changes everything. It's like that first domino. Maybe changing this aspect could be that first domino that you knock over. And then as you're working through other areas, you'll see that that was the thing that triggered all of this positive change in helping you feel more connected and having that quality time that you want. Okay. So just remember that you're not the only ingredient in this recipe here. It's also your partner. So consider what it's like to be in their shoes. Consider what their experience is and maybe why they're not trying to connect. What perspective do you think they're looking at your relationship through? I know it's really easy to just be really, absorbed in your own experience, but consider what they're going through and what has led them to decide not to bother anymore. All right. Well, that's what I've got for you today. I hope that you are able to walk away from this episode with at least one thing that you can think about differently or do differently and start to work your way towards creating more connection and get that quality time that you so deserve. And I will catch you in next week's episode. Bye.
If you like this podcast, then you'll want to join my private Facebook community, Marriage and Motherhood. The fights and the disconnect you're currently experiencing doesn't have to be how things go for the rest of your life. If you're ready to give your marriage a makeover, come join the Marriage and Motherhood community to learn how to create a healthy, happy, and connected marriage that you actually enjoy and your kids can look up to. Thank you so much for listening to the Marriage and Motherhood podcast. I hope that this episode helped you deepen your relationship with your husband and, more importantly, with yourself. I hope to see you inside the Marriage and Motherhood community, and I look forward to supporting you in there. Otherwise, see you back here next week. Bye.